Your blood type carries a hidden evolutionary legacy, one that DNA analysis has only recently started to unravel. Scientists have found that the A and B blood groups are almost unimaginably old, likely tracing back to a common ancestor of humans and monkeys long before we ever stood upright. But here's the twist nobody talks about. A and B haven't been sharing the spotlight equally this whole time. One of them showed up first and spent millions of years quietly running the show. The other arrived later, shaped by a completely different part of the world, and ended up rewriting the rules of disease resistance in ways scientists still argue about. So which one actually wins? Is it the ancient, original, battle-tested, since before humans existed? Or the newer variant, forged somewhere in the heart of Asia, carrying tricks the older type never developed? Today, we're digging into the DNA, the disease data, and the ancient migration patterns to finally settle which blood type, A or B, holds the real hidden advantage. Because once you see the full picture, you'll understand why researchers have spent decades fighting over this exact question. Stick around, because Chapter 5 holds a twist that flips this whole ranking on its head. Long before there were humans to argue about blood types, there was already a war being written into our DNA. Type A traces back further than almost anyone realizes. Researchers studying the genetic blueprint behind blood types have found that the A and B groups are ancient, likely present at least 20 million years ago, well before the split between humans and chimpanzees. That means somewhere out there, an ancient primate ancestor, not even human yet, was already carrying the blueprint for what would eventually become your blood type. Among the two, Type A is widely considered the elder statesman. Evidence suggests it's one of the oldest blood types on record, showing up in the fossil record of early hominids long before modern humans existed. Think about that for a second. Your blood type might be older than fire, older than tools, older than language itself. While other traits were still being sorted out through trial and error, Type A had already claimed its seat at the table. This ancient status isn't just a fun fact either. It means Type A had a massive head start when it came to surviving the earliest waves of disease that swept through prehistoric populations. It weathered ice ages. It weathered migrations out of Africa. It weathered pathogens we don't even have names for anymore. There's a certain resilience baked into being the original, but being first doesn't always mean being best. Sometimes the oldest design is also the one carrying the most outdated baggage, vulnerabilities that never got patched out because evolution simply didn't need to fix what wasn't stopping people from reproducing. Type A survived, but surviving and thriving aren't always the same thing. So while Type A gets bragging rights as the ancient original, the story doesn't end there. Because somewhere down the evolutionary timeline, a challenger showed up, and it came from a very different place. If Type A is the ancient original, Type B is the wild card that showed up later and changed the entire conversation. While researchers still argue about the exact timeline, most agree that Type B is generally more recent than Type A, emerging well after its predecessor had already spread across ancient populations. And it didn't emerge just anywhere. Type B has a geographic fingerprint unlike any other blood type. It's relatively uncommon outside of Central Asia, Northern India, and Russia, which tells us something fascinating. This wasn't a random mutation that popped up everywhere at once. This was a blood type that took root in a specific region and thrived there, shaped by whatever pressures, diseases, climates, and survival challenges existed in that part of the world at the time. So if you're carrying Type B blood right now, there's a real chance you're holding onto a genetic signature that traces back to ancient populations moving through the steppes and river valleys of Central Asia. That's not nothing. That's thousands of years of ancestral history riding along in your veins every single day. Now here's where things get interesting. Being the newer model doesn't automatically mean being the better model, but it does mean Type B evolved under a different set of rules than Type A. It wasn't fighting the exact same battles. It wasn't exposed to the exact same pathogens, which means whatever advantages or disadvantages Type B picked up along the way are going to look completely different from the ones baked into Type A. This is where the ancient original and the newcomer start to diverge in ways that actually matter for your health today. One of them was built for the old world. The other was built for a different old world entirely. And when you put their track records side by side, starting with something as serious as heart disease, the differences start showing up fast. Here's where the DNA starts getting personal, because both type A and type B share a burden that type O simply doesn't carry. Compared with type O, non-O blood types, meaning A, B, and AB, show a modestly higher risk of coronary heart disease and venous blood clots. Researchers believe this comes down to clotting factors. People with A or B blood tend to carry higher levels of proteins like von Willebrand factor and factor VIII, which help blood clot faster. Great if you're bleeding. Not so great if that same clotting tendency starts working against you inside your arteries. So right off the bat, neither ancient type A nor newcomer type B gets to walk away clean here. Both are working with a cardiovascular system that's slightly more clot-prone than their type O counterparts. But here's the twist nobody expects. When researchers dig deeper and compare A and B directly against each other, they're not identical. Among non-O types, some of the largest prospective studies out of the US have found that type B actually carries a slightly higher coronary heart disease risk than type A. That's right. Between the two, it's the newcomer, type B, taking the harder hit here, not the ancient original. So point 1 on the heart disease scoreboard quietly goes to type A. It's not a massive gap, and lifestyle factors like diet, exercise, and stress still matter more than blood type alone ever will. But when you're comparing genetic tendencies side by side, type A comes out slightly ahead in this particular matchup. Which almost feels backwards, right? The older blood type outperforming the newer one? Almost like being ancient came with a few unexpected upgrades. But before you crown type A the winner, wait until you hear what type A's stomach has been dealing with this entire time. Type A might have edged ahead on heart disease, but its stomach tells a very different story. People with type A blood are more likely to get stomach cancer, and researchers think there's a specific reason why. It comes down to a bacteria most people have heard of but never connected to their blood type, H. pylori. This bacteria is usually found lurking in the stomach lining, and it's notorious for causing inflammation and ulcers over time. The connection to type A comes down to how certain molecules on red blood cells interact with bacteria in your gut. Molecules present in type A and type B red blood cells appear to help H. pylori grow more easily, but the data specifically flags type A as carrying the elevated stomach cancer risk within that group. So while type A was busy claiming the win on heart disease last chapter, it's been quietly losing ground in its own stomach the entire time. It's almost poetic in a dark kind of way. The ancient blood type, battle-tested against ice ages and mass migrations, still can't fully shake off a microscopic bacteria that's been coexisting with humans for just as long. This is the part of the story that pop science headlines love to skip. Blood type isn't a simple ranking where one type wins across the board. It's a trade-off sheet. Type A gets a slight edge on the heart. Type B gets stuck with a slightly higher cardiovascular burden. But when the conversation shifts to the stomach, type A is the one left holding a heavier risk. So who's actually ahead right now? It's basically a coin flip so far, 1 point each. But that's about to change dramatically, because the next chapter uncovers a finding that might be the single biggest twist in this entire blood type debate. This is the chapter that changes everything, because when researchers pulled data from a 25-year study out of Shanghai tracking thousands of participants, the results didn't just show a small edge. They showed something much bigger. Compared with blood type A, blood type B was associated with a statistically significant reduced risk of all cancers combined. Let that sink in for a second. Not just stomach cancer, not just one specific type. All cancers, combined, showed a meaningfully lower risk for type B compared to type A. And it didn't stop there. The same research found type B was linked to significantly lower risk of both stomach cancer and bladder cancer specifically, along with a broader pattern of reduced risk across multiple cancer categories the researchers tracked over those 25 years. This is the twist we teased back in the intro. The newcomer, the blood type that showed up later in human history and settled into Central Asia, Northern India, and Russia, appears to carry a genuine cancer risk advantage over the ancient original. Before I show you the last part, if you want to look at your own results and see where type A and type B blood fits into your bloodline, I put a full 3-volume PDF bundle over at the OriginDNA website. It shows you how to read your raw data and find matches beyond what Ancestry or 23andMe tell you. Link is in the description. But stay right here because what comes next is the part most people completely miss. So where does that leave the scoreboard? Type A took heart disease. Type A took the stomach cancer risk too, working against it. But Type B just claimed the single largest health advantage we've covered so far, a broad reduction in overall cancer risk. The ancient original is starting to look a little shakier than its 20 million year head start suggested. But cancer isn't the only battlefield DNA has weighed in on recently. There's a much more modern fight, one that played out in hospitals across the entire planet just a few years ago. Fast forward past ancient migrations and multi-decade cancer studies straight into 2020, when researchers suddenly had a brand new reason to care about your blood type. COVID-19 gave scientists an unprecedented, real-time experiment on how A and B blood actually perform under pressure, and the results turned out to be messier than anyone expected. Some of the earliest and largest studies pointed straight at Type A. In multiple hospital datasets, blood type A showed up as the most common blood type among hospitalized COVID-19 patients, with a significantly higher hospitalization risk compared to Type O. On top of that, patients with blood group A or AB were found to be at increased risk for requiring mechanical ventilation compared to those with blood group O or B. That's a serious mark against the ancient original. But before you assume Type B walked away clean, other research told a completely different story. One cohort study found that blood group B was associated with significantly higher odds of testing positive for COVID-19 in the first place, while Type O appeared protective. Researchers pointed out that this directly contradicted earlier findings that had blamed Type A instead, creating what scientists themselves openly called ambiguity in the field. So, what do we actually take from this? Multiple studies, multiple countries, multiple conclusions, and not one clean answer. Some data says Type A got hit harder once infected. Other data says Type B was more likely to catch it in the first place. It's a split decision, a rare moment where neither blood type walks away as the clear winner. Which almost makes it the perfect midpoint for this whole investigation. Heart disease favored Type A, cancer risk favored Type B, and COVID just handed both of them a mixed bag of bad news. So which one is actually ahead right now? That answer is about to get a lot more interesting. After a chapter full of contradictions, this next one is refreshingly simple, because for once, Type A and Type B actually agree on something, and it's not good news for either of them. Studies have shown that people with Type A and Type B blood have a greater chance of developing Type 2 diabetes compared to those with Type O. Notice what's missing here. There's no split data. No conflicting studies pointing fingers at different blood types. No ambiguity. Both A and B land on the same side of this one, both carrying an elevated risk compared to their Type O counterparts. It's almost strange after everything we've covered so far. Heart disease split them apart, cancer risk split them apart, COVID split them apart in confusing, contradictory ways. But diabetes puts them right back on level ground, shoulder to shoulder, sharing the exact same disadvantage. Researchers still don't have a fully confirmed explanation for why non-O blood types carry this elevated diabetes risk, though the leading theories point back to some of the same biological quirks we've already talked about. The same antigens and molecular structures that influence clotting and disease resistance appear to play a role in how the body manages blood sugar and insulin sensitivity over time. So if you're keeping score, this chapter doesn't hand a point to either side. It's a tie, plain and simple, which honestly makes sense the more you think about it. Type A and Type B aren't opposites. They're variations on a much older shared ancestry, both descended from the same ancient blood type lineage before branching off in different directions. Some risks they inherited separately, others, like this one, they inherited together. But don't get too comfortable with this rare moment of agreement, because the next chapter swings back to a risk that hits one blood type noticeably harder than the other, and it's tied to something as serious as stroke. After that brief moment of agreement, the scoreboard swings again, and this time it's not in Type A's favor. Researchers investigating early onset stroke risk found something specific to Type A that Type B simply doesn't share. A recent study found that people with blood type A were slightly more likely to have a stroke before the age of 60 compared to people with blood type O, Notice the comparison group there. It's type O being used as the baseline, which means type A stood out enough in the data to get flagged specifically, while type B didn't carry that same early onset red flag in this particular research. That's an important distinction, because stroke before 60 isn't just a statistic. It's the kind of event that can reshape someone's entire life decades before they'd expect to face something like that. And the fact that type A shows up with an elevated risk here connects back to something we've already covered. Remember those higher levels of clotting-related proteins tied to non-O blood types in general. Stroke, like heart disease, often comes down to how easily blood clots form and where they end up traveling. So while type A picked up a win back in the heart disease chapter, this stroke finding adds a layer of nuance to that victory. Yes, type A may carry a slightly lower coronary heart disease risk than type B, but when it comes to early onset stroke specifically, type A is the one carrying the flagged risk in this research. It's a reminder that blood type advantages are never as clean as a single headline makes them sound. You can lead in one cardiovascular category and still carry a specific vulnerability in another. Type A giveth, and type A taketh away. So with heart disease, stomach cancer, overall cancer risk, COVID, diabetes, and now stroke all on the table, the picture is getting more complicated by the chapter. But before the final verdict, there's one more piece of this puzzle that has nothing to do with disease at all. It has to do with geography. Every disease risk we've covered so far has a hidden backstory, and that backstory is written in geography. Type A appears frequently in all populations, but it's most predominant in North America and Europe. That's not random. That's the fingerprint of thousands of years of ancestral movement, settlement, and survival across those specific regions. Meanwhile, type B tells a completely different geographic story. It's relatively uncommon outside of Central Asia, Northern India, and Russia. Two blood types, two completely different maps, shaped by different ancestral journeys, different climates, different pathogens, and different survival pressures along the way. This matters more than it might seem at first. Every disease risk we've walked through, the heart disease split, the stomach cancer risk, the cancer shield, the pandemic divide, the diabetes tie, the stroke signal, all of it evolved within populations that were adapting to very specific regional conditions. Type A's traits were shaped largely by whatever pressures existed across ancient Europe and the wider Western world. Type B's traits were shaped by an entirely different set of pressures across Central Asia and the Indian subcontinent. So if you're carrying type A blood today, there's a reasonable chance your ancestry traces back through populations that spread across Europe and North America over countless generations. And if you're carrying type B, your ancestral roots may connect back to the steppes, river valleys, and highlands of Central Asia, a completely different evolutionary path shaped by a different corner of the ancient world entirely. This is the piece that ties the entire investigation together. We're not just looking at random genetic outcomes. We're looking at two different evolutionary strategies, tested in two different parts of the world, each one leaving behind a distinct trail of strengths and weaknesses that show up in the disease data we still study today. And now, with every piece of the puzzle finally on the table, it's time to settle this once and for all. So here's where all 10 chapters land, side by side, one final time. Type A took heart disease, edging out type B with a slightly lower coronary risk. Type A also took the L on stomach cancer, carrying an elevated risk tied to H. pylori that type B simply doesn't share as strongly. Then came the biggest twist of the entire investigation. Type B claimed a statistically significant reduced risk across all cancers combined, the single largest advantage either blood type picked up in this whole breakdown. COVID handed out a split decision. Type A hit harder after infection, type B more likely to catch it in the first place. Diabetes came back as a rare tie, both blood types sharing the same elevated risk compared to type O. And stroke risk before 60 landed specifically on type A, a nuance that quietly undercuts its earlier heart disease win. So if you're tallying this up like a scoreboard, type A picks up more individual wins across the smaller categories. But type B holds the single heaviest piece of evidence on the board, a broad reduction in overall cancer risk that no other finding in this list comes close to matching in scale. If you're forcing a verdict, the DNA edges toward type B as the blood type with the hidden advantage, not because it wins everything, but because the one category it dominates happens to be the deadliest disease category we track. Type A remains the ancient original, battle-tested and resilient in its own right. But Type B, the newcomer from Central Asia, appears to be quietly holding the stronger long-term hand. Of course, none of this replaces diet, exercise, screenings, or an actual conversation with your doctor. Blood type is a piece of the puzzle, not the whole picture. But it's a fascinating piece, one that's been sitting in your veins this entire time, waiting for the data to finally catch up. So there it is, 10 chapters, one ancient rivalry, and a DNA-backed answer to a question most people never even thought to ask. Type A, the original, forged deep in humanity's evolutionary past, carrying a slight heart disease edge, but weighed down by stomach cancer and stroke risk. Type B, the newcomer from Central Asia, arriving later on the evolutionary timeline, but walking away with the single strongest piece of evidence in this entire investigation: a meaningfully lower risk across all cancers combined. Neither blood type is perfect. Neither one wins across the board. But if you had to bet on which one holds the true hidden advantage, the data leans toward Type B, not by a landslide, but by the one category that matters most. If you made it this far, you now know something about your own blood that most people will go their entire lives without ever hearing. Whether you're Type A carrying that ancient resilience, or Type B carrying that unexpected cancer risk edge, your blood has been quietly telling a story that started millions of years before you were even born. So the next time someone asks what your blood type is, you'll know it's never just a letter on a donor card. It's a piece of ancient history, still running through your veins today. Thanks for sticking around for the full reveal, and I'll see you in the next one.
Thanks for watching this video. Before you go, your raw DNA data has hidden stories waiting to be unlocked. Tap the link in the description to download your ebook copy and find out what they are.